All right, so what the soil is made up of and stuff. So this is really important. I wish we had more time to talk about it, but I'll have to be really brief. You've got the rock that the planet's made of. That's the bedrock, and then through erosion and other processes like that, little bits of that get ground off into various sorts of powders, right? And based on the makeup of those powders, you have different materials. At the very smallest particle size, you've got clay, right? Like our South Carolina red clay, that's a very small particle size. So the particles will pack together very tightly like what you see here. In the middle particle size, you've got silt, like what this guy's got in his hand right here. This is silt. And then at the large particle size, of course, you've got sand, big grains of various minerals, whether they might be quartz or pieces of seashells or things like that. So the clay has a downside that the particles pack together so tightly that when the roots grow into it, they might not have enough air, right? But the clay, the particles are very finely divided, so those particles have a lot of surface area. So whatever minerals are in the clay are very available to the plant because the clay particles are so tiny that it's very easy for the ions to get in and out. Conversely, with the sand, you have the opposite problem. The sand grains are very large, so the surface area is very low. So even if there's minerals in the sand grain that the plant needs, the plant might not be able to get to them because so little surface area is exposed to them. On the other side, though, there's plenty of air surface. There's plenty of air in sand for the roots to breathe, and when water moves through sand, it will move very quickly. Versus in clay, the water will turn the clay into muck and then just sit there for a while and possibly drown the roots. So actually, none of those types of soil are very good on their own for growing plants. Plants are able, some of the tougher, hardier plants are able to grow in things like sand and clay and silt. But what they really need is organic materials. What most plants will really do a lot better with is if organic materials are worked into that soil. This is what the humus is. Okay? So humus, not hummus, that's the garbanzo bean stuff. Humus is dead organic materials, which typically crumbled into a sort of powder of some consistency or other. And these dead organic materials are rich in carbon, which is why it's black. And they don't smell bad if done. Someone misspelled hummus. They don't smell bad if done properly. So that's got both in it. So I guess that works. So when you're doing a compost pile, for instance, you're trying to make humus, right? Composting is, you're going to take your kitchen scraps and you can throw them in a pile with some, if you get like shredded leaves from your trees and, grass clippings and your kitchen waste, and you kind of throw it all together, it will decompose and it won't smell bad or anything like that. It'll become this sort of, if you turn it and treat it properly, it will become this black material that you can then work into your soil to improve the soil. This stuff is actually really valuable, and it's a huge natural resource that's available in places. And it's a natural resource that people pay pretty much exactly zero attention to in terms of value. So if you try to buy this in the store, it's potting soil, right? And potting soil costs money, right? To get a bag, you might drop $6 at Lowe's to buy. When you have a field of humus-rich soil, how many bags of potting soil is that, right? That's this huge. What's the money if you have 10 acres and the humus is this thick on that? It's a huge resource. It's worth a lot. People don't understand how important it is. So human beings have been incredibly stupid for a lot of human history in terms of how they've used land. Like one of the things we keep doing is we keep building huge cities on the absolute best farmland in the world. So Paris and New York, for instance, are built on absolutely top prime real estate, right? And of course, they've been ruined. You can't do anything with New York anymore because it's all covered in concrete and hobos, right? So there's absolutely no possibility for farming in there unless you want to be a hipster and farm on the roof of a skyscraper or something like that, you know, make single batch tomatoes in an old Coke can or something. But for everyone else, you know, if you need to do industrial scale farming, it really is very helpful if you have something like this. And to put this into context, like what a huge problem this really is. Let's look at, you know, the rainforest is being destroyed, right, by subsistence farmers. And why do the subsistence farmers need to keep cutting down more rainforest? The reason is that when you cut down the rainforest with slash and burn, the rainforest may be very lush, right? And you can't blame these people who are just trying to get food the only way they know how, right? It's really not their fault. So you destroy all this vegetation that's here, and all the minerals from that end up as a fine layer of ash on there, which is fine until the next time it rains, right? Which happens kind of frequently in the rainforest. Then all those nutrients wash away. So you get about half a crop from this land when you slash and burn, and then it becomes useless, and you have to move on and cut down more rainforest to, if you want to eat something next year. Okay, so it's a vicious cycle where these people are forced to cut down more and more ground. Interestingly, in South America, there were civilizations that existed in the rainforest with farming, and they didn't do slash and burn farming. Instead, they manufactured fertile soil themselves. Okay? So they would actually invest in the soil, and using certain simple techniques that can be replicated today, they actually produce. So this is the infertile soil of the rainforest. This is, if you just dig somewhere randomly in the rainforest, you'll find this, right? And this is worthless for farming. If you take all the nutrients are in the plants on top of it, right? Every scrap of useful elemental materials up there. This is just worthless stuff down here. This stuff is full of all kinds of, you know, ions grabbed in by the carbon and stuff like that, and so you can farm on this, okay? And there are still patches of this in the rainforest where those old civilizations existed, because that stuff has remained itself after those civilizations were accidentally wiped out by the accidental introduction of diseases into the area. So like the first people who went in, they explored and they said, there's all kinds of cities along the Amazon. And then the next people who came in and explored, they said, there's no cities on the Amazon. I don't know what those last people were talking about. What happened was the first guy who came through accidentally didn't realize he was carrying like 8 diseases that those cities had no resistance to. So after they passed through, they were wiped out. But yeah, we can actually manufacture fertile soil in places if we want to put the time and effort into it, and we can actually make ground fertile. But what people do instead is they just buy fertilizers, which are very temporary fixes and have the agricultural runoff problem, which pollutes the waterways around those farms. But it is possible, if you want to do sustainable farming, to actually, you know, put natural charcoal and other substances and compost and stuff like that into the ground to actually make fertile ground where there is no ground. All right. That's it for today? Okay.